Hello everyone, welcome back to another What's for Dinner video, or welcome if you are new. My name is Veronica, and in today's video I am going to be sharing with you some meals that we've had this past week. We also tried 3 new recipes by the Pioneer Woman that I will be sharing with you, and we also tried a new dessert recipe that I will be sharing with you as well. So stay tuned. This night for dinner, I fixed Pioneer Woman's meatloaf. The first thing that I done was took 6 slices of white bread, and I just tore them apart a little bit and I placed them in a bowl. I then poured 1 cup of milk over top of the bread, and I just let that set for several minutes, and that way the bread could soak up all the milk. In a separate bowl, I added 2 pounds of ground beef, and then I added in 1 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And then I just sprinkled a little bit of salt and pepper over top of that. And then I added in 1/4 teaspoon of seasoned salt. And the recipe calls for fresh parsley, which I did not have, so I just used dried minced parsley. And then I added in 4 whole eggs that I had already beaten. And then I took my bread that I had been soaking in the milk and I added it to that meat mixture, and I just mixed everything up. This meatloaf was wetter than normal, like any meatloaf that I have ever fixed. In the end, it did turn out really good. We all enjoyed it. It was different. But like I said, it's a little bit more moist than any meatloaf that I've ever made. If you've never made meatloaf before, you want to mix it up kind of easy, and that way your meatloaf doesn't turn out tough or dry. So I just kind of mixed it up really easy. Like I said, I believe the milk and the bread just made it look really wet. I don't know how to explain it. I think this is the first meatloaf recipe that I've ever made that didn't call for green pepper in the ingredients. This was also the first meatloaf that I've ever made that I didn't use a loaf pan. I used a broiler pan. And I think I like using the broiler pan better than I do the loaf pan. Let me know in the comments below what you use to cook your meatloaf on. Do you use a baking sheet, a loaf pan, or a broiler pan, or do you make it a different way? So after I finally got everything mixed up, I just set that bowl aside, and then I took a broiler pan and I lined the underneath part with aluminum foil, and that way it would make for easier cleanup. And then I just removed everything from the bowl. As you can see, it's, like I said, wetter than a normal meatloaf, so it was a little bit tougher to shape, but like I said, it still turned out really good. So here I am just shaping it up, getting it into shape. Once I got my meatloaf into a loaf shape, I then took a pack of bacon and I wrapped the bacon over top of the meatloaf, and I just tucked the ends of the bacon underneath, and that way it would also help support the meatloaf. I've never had a meatloaf with bacon either, so I was super excited whenever I seen that there was bacon in this recipe, because bacon is so good. Bacon makes everything better. However, my bacon did not turn out as crispy as I would have liked, so whenever I make this again, I will probably bake it longer until my bacon is crispier. And it's like trying to get the right in between. You want your meatloaf done, but you don't want it overdone, but you also want your bacon really done as well. Now that I'm doing the voiceover, watching this, I tell you that bacon looks really good on it. Once I finally had all of the bacon added, I then started on my sauce. So I just set that aside and in a separate bowl. I added 1.5 cups of ketchup. And then I added 1/3 cup of brown sugar. And then I added in 1 teaspoon of dry mustard. You can also add a dash of Tabasco sauce if you like. I didn't have any on hand, so I skipped that step. And then I just took my mini whisk and I whisked all of those ingredients together until they were all well combined. And then I poured about 1/3 of the sauce over top of the bacon, and I just spread all of that sauce over top with a spoon. If you do make this meatloaf, make sure that you don't put your spoon or brush, whatever you're using to spread the sauce, back in your bowl, because after it touches the meat, you don't want it to contaminate your sauces. Because after the meatloaf cooks for 45 minutes, you have to put more of that sauce back on it. I then placed the meatloaf in my oven that I had preheated to 350 degrees, and I baked it for 45 minutes. While my meatloaf was in the oven, I started on our sides. I fixed some mashed potatoes, corn on the cob, and some Rhodes dinner rolls. This was the first time that we ever tried the Rhodes dinner rolls, and they were amazing. After my meatloaf had baked for 45 minutes, I removed it from the oven, and then I added another layer of sauce over top of it. And then I placed it back in the oven and I baked it for another 25 to 30 minutes, just until it reached an internal temperature of 160 degrees. It just depends on your oven. Or like I said earlier, depending on how well you want your bacon to be done. This is what my meatloaf looked like whenever I took it out of the oven, and here is my plate. Like I said, we all enjoyed the meatloaf and those Rhodes rolls. I will definitely be buying those rolls again. This night for supper, I fixed Pioneer Woman's Sloppy Joes. If you watched my What's for Dinner video a few weeks ago, you know that I just fixed the canned Manwich Sloppy Joes, which are still fine. I still love the canned Sloppy Joes. There's no problem with those. But I said in my video, the next time that I make Sloppy Joes, I want to make them homemade. So that's what I done. So I started out adding 2 tablespoons of butter to my Dutch oven, and I just let that butter heat up over medium heat. And then I added a little over 2 pounds of lean ground beef to my Dutch oven, and I just used my meat chopper and I chopped that meat up and I cooked it until it was brown. Once my ground beef was done cooking, I then drained the grease off of it. And then I added in about 1/2 of a whole large onion diced. I'm using the Great Value frozen onions, so I just kind of half that bag. It's a lot easier using these chopped onions in recipes that you have to cook with instead of having to chop up an onion, so I like to keep those on hand for recipes. And then I added in 5 cloves of minced garlic. And then I just mixed all of those ingredients together, and I cooked that until my onion and the garlic became soft. And in a separate pan, I had 1 whole large green bell pepper diced up, And I was sauteing that in a separate pan because I added it at the very end. My dad cannot have green bell pepper, and so I cooked that separately, and just like I said, I just added that at the very end. But if you can have green bell pepper and you want to go ahead and add that into your ground beef, you can do that as well. Once my vegetables were cooked, I then added in 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, 1.5 cups of ketchup, 2 teaspoons of chili powder, or if you want more, you can add more. It's just whatever your preference is. And then I added in 1 teaspoon of dry mustard. And then I added in 1 cup of water. And then I just mixed all of those ingredients together until everything was well combined. And then I added just a few of the red pepper flakes. You can add more if you like, but if you've been here for a while, you know that I don't like a whole lot of spicy food. So I didn't want to add too much and then I wouldn't be able to take it away. So I just added a little bit, but if you want more, you can add more. You cook how your family likes it. And then I added in 2 tablespoons of tomato paste and just a dash of Worcestershire sauce, or as I normally say, the W sauce. And I just mixed all of that up really well. And then I placed my lid on my Dutch oven and I let that simmer for 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes, my dad got out what he wanted, and then I added the green bell pepper to the meat mixture, and I just stirred that up really well, and it was ready to eat. Like I said, this was my first time making homemade sloppy joes, and now I totally understand what all the hype was over Pioneer Woman sloppy joes. They were so good. My whole family enjoyed them. And we served our sloppy joes on the market side brioche buns. And for our side, we just had chips. I had the ruffle chips with some ranch dip on the side. This night for supper, I fixed Pioneer Woman's Instant pot roast. The first thing that I done was turn my Instant Pot on to saute, and I'll let that warm up until it said hot. And then I took my chuck roast. I had a beef chuck roast that was a little over 3 pounds, and I just sprinkled some salt and pepper on each side. Whenever my Instant Pot was heated up, I then added in 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I then added in my chuck roast to sear until it was browned on all sides. Once the chuck roast was good and brown, I then removed it from my Instant Pot, which was a little bit hard because that chuck roast was heavy. I then added in a bag of baby carrots, and I also added in a bag and a half of chopped onions. I didn't have a fresh onion, or I would have just quartered an onion up and put that in there, which may have been better this way. Still really good. And then I cooked the carrots and the onions for about 4 to 5 minutes, and I just stirred them occasionally. I then added in 1 cup of red wine, and I stirred that up really well. I then poured in 2 cups of beef stock, and I just stirred that up as well. Then the recipe calls for 3 sprigs of fresh rosemary and 3 sprigs of fresh thyme, which I did not have, but I did have some poultry herbs, and I just sprinkled some of that in there, and then I stirred that up really well. And then I added my chuck roast back to that, and I just put it down in the liquid, and I just made sure the chuck roast was covered well with the liquid. And then I placed my lid on my Instant Pot, and I made sure it was locked into place, and I placed the vent to ceiling, and then I pushed manual, and I set the time to 1 hour and 20 minutes. When the cooking time was done, I allowed my Instant Pot to do a natural release. And then I removed the chuck roast to a different dish so I could shred it up. But as you can see, the chuck roast was so tender, it was literally falling apart. So I just grabbed a slotted spoon, and I just removed everything from my Instant Pot. And then I took 2 forks and shred up the meat, and it was so tender and it was so good. And for our sides, I fixed some mashed potatoes, and I fixed some brown and serve dinner rolls, and my whole family enjoyed this. This chuck roast, like I said, was super tender. The carrots was cooked perfectly. This meal was amazing. This night for supper, we had a nacho bar. You just get your tortilla chips and put whatever you like on there. I had cheese, hamburger meat, and some black beans on mine. And my husband also wanted me to show you what his looked like. He says his looked better than mine. You be the judge. For dessert, I'm going to make some copycat key lime crumble cookies. The first thing that I'm going to do is add 1.5 cups of softened butter to my mixer. And then I'm going to add in 3/4 a cup of granulated sugar and 1.5 cups of brown sugar. And I'll just place my attachment on my mixer, and then I'm going to cream these together. And then I'm going to add in 2 eggs whenever that's creamed together. And then I'm going to add in 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. And then I'm going to mix these ingredients together until they are light and creamy. And then I'm going to add in 3 3/4 cups of flour. Three cups of crushed graham crackers or 2 sleeves, and I had just ran these through my food processor to crumble them up really well. And then I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to mix these up just a little bit with the wet ingredients before I turn my mixer on, and that way all of my dry ingredients don't fly out. And I'll just mix all of these until they're well combined. So once I have my dough mixed up, I'm going to get a 1/2 cup measuring cup, and I'm going to portion out my cookie dough into 1/2 cups. And then I'm going to roll them up and place them on my baking sheet. And I have my baking sheet lined with a silicone baking mat, and that way they won't stick. I bought 2 silicone baking mats a while back, and I absolutely love them. They work like magic. These are very big cookies. Let me know in the comments below if you have ever had a crumble cookie and what you think. We just got one in our area a couple months ago, and they are really good. And I also have my oven preheating to 350 degrees, as that's what I'm going to bake these cookies on. So the recipe says to do 6 cookies each baking sheet, and whenever you have your cookie rolled out, then you just press them down slightly. To flatten them out just a little bit. And then I'm just going to set this aside, and I'm going to grab another baking sheet with another silicone baking mat, and I'm going to roll out the rest of my dough. And now I'm going to put these in the oven on 350 degrees, and I'm going to bake them for 12 to 15 minutes until the cookies turn golden brown. My cookies just come out of the oven, so I'm just going to take a measuring cup and I'm going to push slightly down on the cookies, and that way whenever I make the cookie filling, I can put it in here. And then I'm just going to let them cool completely before I start making the filling that will go in these cookies. Once my cookies were completely cooled off, I then started on my key lime pie filling. I added 2 8-ounce blocks of cream cheese that I had let come to room temperature to my mixer, and I creamed those together until they were smooth. I then added in a 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk to that. And then I mixed the cream cheese and the sweetened condensed milk up until they were thoroughly combined. I then added in 4 tablespoons of powdered sugar and a half a cup of lime juice. I ended up adding just a little bit more lime juice. You can add, in the recipe it says a half a cup to 3/4 of a cup. It just depends on what you like, but you want to start out small and then kind of test it, because if you add too much, you can't take it away. So just add a little bit at a time until you get to where your family likes it. And then I just mixed all of those ingredients together, and then I brought my cookies back to my countertop, and then I just used a ice cream scoop, and then I just poured a little bit of that key lime pie filling onto each cookie. If you like, you can also take some limes and cut those into wedges and add 1 wedge on top of each cookie. If I would have done that, we probably would have took the limes off. I think it's more for looks. But after I got all of the pie filling added, I then took some whipped cream and I just added a little dollop on each cookie, and they turned out absolutely delicious. That's it for today's video. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.